Welcome back. As I Eat the World is a play that follows a Latin man who goes on a journey navigating forced masculinity and challenges with mental health while confronting the realities of living with an eating disorder. Playwright and performer Luis Roberto Herrera joins me to discuss As I Eat the World. Luis, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, how did your journey as playwright and performer with As I Eat the World begin?
I mean, it started about a year ago. A friend of mine named Frankie Gonzalez, he wrote his own one-person show called Heartstop, which is about his struggles with weight, and that gave me the courage to talk about my own struggles with weight, eating disorders, and mental health. And no one was producing my work, so I decided I'm going to just do it myself and write my own story.
Now, I want to talk about, like, you mentioned that it's like a one person, like, type of thing. Like, I mean, that sounds very intimidating. And then, plus, also the subject matter, like, you're really putting yourself out there. Can you just talk about that experience and, how in any way is that therapeutic for you, or is it at all?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a one-person show. I'm on stage for an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes just by myself. And it's challenging having to talk to the audience and also to myself for that long. And therapeutic, at first, it was hard for me to perform this kind of thing. And as I've been doing it again and again, it's getting easier. And I find it to be not only helpful for me, but therapeutic for those that come and see it.
Now, can you talk about the significance of presenting the show at the Tank?
For sure. This is the first full production that the show is getting. It's having a 3-week run, and it being on this kind of public scale gives more people the opportunity to experience the story and to kind of see something that is, for all intents and purposes, invisible to the public eye.
Now, as I mentioned, the play follows a Latin man as he struggles with forced masculinity, which is a major theme within the play. Can you expand on more themes of forced masculinity?
For sure, forced masculinity, that is such a interesting thing, right? Especially within POC culture, or just Latina culture specifically, because we are raised where men are supposed to be what is considered men, right? We have to be the ones that take care of everyone. We have to be the ones that provide. We have to be manly. We have to be gruff. We have to be, intense and physical. But that's not all that men can be, right? Men can be feminine. Men can be soft. Men can be delicate. Men can be gentle. And this forced masculinity within the Latina culture sometimes goes against it. And this show is about how that kind of struggle between the two, what that can do to someone's psyche.
Now, as you mentioned, it's pretty much a global challenge for so many people across the world and across different cultures. So, although, the spotlight is on the Latin experience, could you talk about maybe ways that other, men from different communities could also relate to that experience?
For sure, because it's such a normal thing in a lot of society today, I think people will just recognize how they have been forced to be what is considered a man within their own households, within their own communities, and recognize that maybe that isn't the only way. Maybe if they had done something different, then they themselves would be who they really wanted to be, or be who they really should have been, in whatever way that means. And I think I just tackle it from the Latina perspective because that's what I know, right? But I think people will be able to resonate with it because it is such a universal problem.
Right. And it could also be a moment for reflection of people watching and how, see how, it mirrors in their own communities. So, I think that's pretty amazing. Now, the main character of the play struggles with mental health and wellness. What were some of the challenges of translating that to the stage? And as you mentioned, you're doing it by yourself. So it's not like, maybe you have other characters that could highlight that. So, what were some of the challenges of kind of like portraying that on stage?
For sure, because I myself, it's semi-autobiographical. And portraying these kind of things on the stage, I think the challenge was, how do I talk about them without seeming like I'm just reading a textbook or like I'm just giving a lesson? And the way that I've decided to do that is by telling stories from this character's past and how they've gotten to this point, and experiences in their upbringing all the way up into the point of where the play takes place.
Now, director Scout Davis assisted with the telling of this story. Could you talk about your experience working with them?
Yeah, of course. Scout Davis, the play wouldn't exist without Scout. I approached them with the idea and the title, and it was a weird idea, and it was a interesting title, and they immediately said, yes, let's do it. And they've been so generous and giving when it comes to ideas. When I've come to them, they've either have been honest with me and told me that works, but what if we did this instead? And they've just been constantly with me since the beginning when I first wrote this in December of last year.
Now, you talked about, which I think is hard for a lot of creatives, like when someone says, maybe we should do this.
Yeah.
You know, how did you like face that, especially with a story so personal?
Yeah, I mean, because while it is a personal story, it is still, stories need to not only be sometimes kind of enlightening, but they also need to be somewhat entertaining because you want to keep someone's attention. So that's how I approached it. Anytime someone would give me advice or whenever Scout would suggest something differently, I knew that the place that they were coming from was a place of to make this better, to make the story better, to make people want to listen more. And that's how I went about being okay with people telling me what would work better for your own personal story.
Now, how has Scout's background as a non-binary queer person influenced some of the themes in the play?
Now, I don't want to speak for Scout and their experience, but I know that they themselves have struggled with certain things within their life, whether it be being the masculinity issue or eating disorders or things like that. They themselves have brought that perspective into it, which has only made us kind of mesh in a much better way, and they've been able to understand things that I'm going through, and that's how they've been able to communicate with me so easily throughout the process of writing and rewriting and performing and finally the production.
Now, what I think that is also, like, even as I'm listening to it now, that, you know, regardless of your gender or identity, so many people can relate, you know, to like some of the challenges that the main character is going through. I also want to highlight, you know, that the main character confronts eating disorders, which is something that's not not often explored in regard to, you know, by and for men. So can you just talk about that experience, kind of like bringing that to the forefront?
For sure. Eating disorders are, you know, more often than not shown as a thing that only women suffer through, or women are maybe non-binary, but more men than people realize deal with eating disorders. Maybe they themselves don't even recognize that it is an eating disorder. And I myself have been suffering through one since, for as long as I can remember, since the 7th grade. And I knew that bringing this to light would help those that don't even know, those that do know and are afraid to talk about it. But as you said, this is for anyone of any gender, anyone of any race, right? People that aren't sure if they know how to talk about it or if they can talk about it or if anyone else has experienced what they have experienced. And this story is for them. It's like, no, you're not alone. No one is alone. You have someone and other people who have experienced the same thing.
Now, do you possibly hope, or, you know, could this be kind of like laying the groundwork for, you know, as a way to normalize that this is something that happens in a lot of communities, you know, with people who identify as male?
I would like to hope so. I've had a lot of people, because I've performed this at a few fringe festivals around the country, and I've had people come up to me, men come up to me, letting me know that they felt connected, that they have never thought about it in the way that it was presented, and that they've never seen a story like this told out loud. They've only heard about it like in whispers or in like groups. So I am hoping that it will shine a light and that it will make something that is invisible visible.
Now, how did this particular theme also influence the creation of As I Eat the World?
It influenced it because, you know, I myself, I am always trying to look for stories to tell that maybe people don't know too much about. And I think the point of theater and the point of this piece is to educate, but also entertain, right? Because I feel like we can learn something from everything. And I think this play itself is in a weird way, educational while still being entertaining. It's funny, there's dancing, there's music, there's humor, but then there's also something really profound to discover a journey that is this real.
And also, I mean, I like that you kind of talked about how, things are funny, and because not everyone's experience with something traumatic is at every point, like they're feeling sad. There sometimes are moments where, you may laugh, or sometimes laughing is how people, go through a lot of tough situations. So can you talk about the importance of kind of like also having moments like that in the play?
For sure, yeah. I mean, life is beautiful and also terrifying at the same time, right? And no matter what life experiences we have, tough or amazing, there are different moments for each. And this kind of journey, this play, we found it important that if we want to talk about something so serious, we need to also shine light on the good things, right? The funny moments, the beautiful moments, the weird moments, right? And all those will make people feel connected and make them feel like, oh, this is something I can listen to, and it won't just make me super duper sad.
Right, because I think if you go into something, sometimes it can make you a little bit closed off. You like, you don't want to feel the emotion if you know
Exactly.
that's exactly what you're getting into. So I think kind of having that as like, a creative standpoint kind of like lets people open, and kind of like brings down that wall so that they can be vulnerable when the time comes for them to be vulnerable. So I think that's pretty amazing. Now, what do you hope audiences, especially those from your community, gain from interacting with As I Eat the World?
I hope that they walk away knowing that they're not alone. I hope they walk away with the idea that maybe they can talk about their issues a little more, that if they talk about their issues, maybe certain things can be prevented moving forward in their lives. And also maybe it'll help them recognize other people in their own lives that are dealing with these things that maybe they had thought was just a weird thing.
Well, Luis, I want to thank you so much for joining me and having this really interesting, and just like, I don't know, just I think it was a really interesting and great conversation to have about so many topics that we don't get to talk about often. So I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, remember, As I Eat the World will be available to watch at the Tank until December 17th at 312 W and 36th Street. You can find out more about ticket information at www.thetanknyc.org. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Jaime on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.